67. Into the perilous silences beyond. So was she left alone in the huge wood, surrounded by a dim, unthinking world, her husband's corpse on her forsaken breast. She measured not her loss with helpless thoughts, nor rent with tears the marble seals of pain. She rose not yet to face the dreadful God. Over the body she loved, her soul leaned out in a great stillness, without stir or voice, as if her mind had died with such a one. But still the human heart in her beat on, aware still of his being near to hers. Closely she clasped to her the mute, lifeless form, as though to guard the oneness they had been, and keep the spirit still within the frame. Then suddenly there came on her the change which in tremendous moments of our lives can overtake sometimes the human soul and hold it up towards its luminous source. Into the soul's splendor and intensity, a crescent of miraculous birth is tossed, whose horn of mystery floats in a bright void. As into a heaven of strength and silence, thought is ravished. All this living mortal clay is seized, and in a swift and fiery flood of touches, shaped by a harmonist unseen. A new sight comes, new voices in us form, a body of the music of the gods. This, in a moment's depths, was born in her. Thus were the cords of self-oblivion torn. Like one who looks up to far heights, she saw, ancient and strong as on a windless summit, above her, where she had worked in her lone mind, laboring apart in a soul tower of self, the source of all which she had seemed or wrought, a power projected into cosmic space, a slow embodiment of the aeonic will, a starry fragment of the eternal truth, the passionate instrument of an unmoved power. A presence was there that filled the listening world. A central all assumed her boundless life. A sovereignty, a silence, and a swiftness. One brooded over abysses. Who was she? It sank into her soul, and she was changed. Then, like a thought fulfilled by some great word, that mightiness assumed a symbol form. Her being's spaces quivered with its touch. It covered her as with immortal wings. On its lips, the curve of the unuttered truth, a halo of wisdom's lightnings for its crown. It entered the mystic lotus in her head, a thousand-petaled home of power and light. Immortal leader of her mortality, doer of her works, and fountain of her words, invulnerable by time, omnipotent, it stood above her, calm, immobile, mute. All in her mated with that mighty hour, as if the last remnant had been slain by death of the humanity that once was hers. Assuming a spiritual wide control, making life's sea a mirror of heaven's sky, the young divinity in her earthly limbs, filled with celestial strength, her mortal part. Over was the haunted pain, the rending fear. Calmly, she laid upon the forest soil the dead who still reposed upon her breast, and bore to turn away from the dead form. Soul now she rose to meet the dreadful God. Transcended now was the poor human rule. A sovereign power was there, a godlike will. A moment yet, she lingered, motionless, and looked down on the dead man at her feet. Then, like a tree recovering from a wind, she raised her noble head. Fronting her gaze, something stood there, unearthly, somber, grand, a limitless denial of all being that wore the terror and wonder of a shape. In its appalling eyes, the tenebrous form bore the deep pity of destroying gods. A sorrowful irony curved the dreadful lips that speak the word of doom. Eternal night, in the dire beauty of an immortal face, pitying arose, receiving all that lives forever into its fathomless heart, refuge of creatures from their anguish and world pain. His shape was nothingness made real. His limbs were monuments of transience, and beneath brows of unwearying calm, large, godlike lids, silent, beheld the writhing serpent, life. The two opposed each other with their eyes, woman and universal God, around her piling their void, unbearable loneliness upon her mighty, uncompanioned soul. Many inhuman solitudes came close. A sad and formidable voice arose, which seemed the whole adverse worlds. Unclasp, it cried, thy passionate influence, and relax, O slave of nature, changing tool of changeless law, who vainly writhest rebellion to my yoke. Thy elemental grasp, weep and forget. Entomb thy passion in its living grave. Leave now the once loved spirit's abandoned robe. Pass lonely back to thy vain life on earth. it ceased. She moved not, and it spoke again. Wilt thou forever keep thy passionate hold, thyself a creature doomed like him to pass, denying his soul death's calm and silent rest? Relax thy grasp. This body is earth's, and thine, his spirit, now belongs to a greater power. Woman, thy husband suffers. Savitri drew back her heart's force that clasped his body still. She rose and stood gathered in lonely strength, like one who drops his mantle for a race and waits the signal, motionlessly swift. Then Death, the king, leaned boundless down, as leans night over tired lands when evening pales, and fading gleams break down the horizon's walls, nor yet the dusk grows mystic with the moon. The dim and awful Godhead rose erect from his brief stooping to his touch on earth, and like a dream that wakes out of a dream, forsaking the mold of that dead clay, another luminous Satyavan arose. In the earth's day, the silent marvel stood between the mortal woman and the God. Such seemed he, as if one departed came wearing the light of a celestial shape, splendidly alien to the mortal air. Between two realms he stood, not wavering, but fixed in quiet, strong expectancy, like one who, sightless, listens for a command. So were they immobile on that earthly field, powers not of earth, though one in human clay. On either side of one, two spirits strove. Silence battled with silence, vast with vast. But now the impulse of the path was felt, moving from the silence that supports the stars to touch the confines of the visible world. Luminous, he moved away. Behind him, death went slowly with his noiseless tread, as seen in dream-built fields a shadowy herdsman glides behind some wanderer from his voiceless herds. And Savitri moved behind eternal death. Her mortal pace was equaled with the gods. Wordless, she traveled in her lover's steps, planting her human feet where his had trod, into the perilous silences beyond.